Peter says, shouldn't we invest in the things we use a lot instead of minimizing them? Buying a coffee machine is much cheaper than buying a coffee every time we want one. No, I just buy a new coffee machine every morning.
To get the freshest cup possible.
Yeah, I want it to taste like plastic a little bit.
It's like people that buy a new shirt every day.
Yeah.
Never want to wear it twice.
Oh my
We were in Toronto. The guy who owned the venue there, he used to be in so we were on tour last year. And the guy who owned the venue in Toronto, he used to be in some metal band. They would go out touring, and he said the thing that was most precious on their rider was a new pair of socks and a new shirt, like a pack of new black shirts every day, because apparently when you're a rock band with 6 or 7 dudes living out of a van, you don't shower a whole lot, and so you just change your underwear.
Laundry is not at the top of the list.
No, you change your underwear, you change your shirt, but otherwise, no. I mean, and I think the same goes for my clothes. I mean, I own the shirt that I'm wearing here. The same is true. I have I make coffee at home. Made coffee at home this morning, and we're not saying don't own anything. We're trying to figure out. We're trying to parse out. So there's an essay on our website recently that you saw, because I saw you tweet about it. But essential, non-essential, and junk, basically, and figuring out what's essential for you. And it's going to be different from me versus Ryan number 2, and each of us is going to have something different, especially in the second category, which is non-essential, the things that add value to our lives. Most of us have the same fundamental needs for housing and food and clothing, but then beyond that, what adds value to our life? They're non-essentials. I don't have to have this glass. I could go to the fountain and stick my head under it and drink that way, but this adds value to my life. So having this glass is a non-essential, but something that adds value. The problem is the third category, which is probably 90+% of the stuff that we own, is junk. And we pretend it adds value. Or here's the other thing. There's almost this weird in-between area where there are these non-essentials that are actually we don't use most of the time. And I think that's where you come in and you say, okay, maybe you do get value from it, but maybe you only get value from it once a month or once a year. Why let it take up all that extra space in the meantime?
And I think coffee machines also, like, to use this specific example, like, if you're into coffee, that's a great thing to own. Like, I love my coffee machine. I research them. I'm excited about them, and I think it's important that people know that, like, at least from our perspective, I think you guys agree. It's like the things that you love and the things that you want to own and that you care about are things that are good and healthy, and that's a great thing to invest in.
For sure. So going with the same example, like I'm thinking about, so I've got a coffee setup, but I do pour over because it's one glass and I don't waste the pot.
Chemex or V60 or
V60? Oh,
Kalita. No,
Kalita.
Yeah, it's like a Kalita. It's like the blue bottle.
Yeah,
the blue bottle Kalita. I think it's still considered a Kalita. I don't know. I should know this stuff owning a coffee shop. But I don't have a coffee maker, and when there's one point I had my mom, my grandmother, and 3 siblings staying with us, and all of them drank coffee. So sitting there and making,
your hand got really tired.
Yeah, to make it 6 pour. I was like, good grief! Like, I need to get a coffee machine, but I was like, I'm not gonna buy a coffee machine. Just for this every once in a while thing where I got guests who all drink coffee, and it's a pain in the butt to make all these pour overs. But a thing like being able to rent one and have one delivered from Omni in 2 hours to my house, man, that's a perfect solution.
Yeah, or now you have these apps like a Postmates or something, you could get 6 cups of coffee delivered probably. There you go. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know exactly how that would work with coffee, but I assume that you could do that as well. And so it's sort of like these. Now, if you had 6 people living with you every day, then that'd be a different story. Then you would need a different solution. For me, I do 2 separate pour overs, V60s in the morning, one for me, one for Bex, and I don't wait till because I like having coffee with her, so I don't want to make one and then make a second one, and so I just have 2 set up, and that's what works well for me. I use it every day. That is something that is non-essential, but it is pretty damn close to essential at this point. I think about when I'm thinking about these, the first time I really thought about the junk. When Ryan, you and I came with the 20/20 rule, the just-in-case rule. Anything that you don't need, you can replace for less than $20 in less than 20 minutes. Or apparently, if Omni is in your city, you can also replace it or temporarily replace it. when I was going on my honeymoon, so I was 22 years old. You remember, you were in my wedding.
Yes. With the stretch, was it a stretch Escalade?
No, it was a stretch Hummer.
Oh yeah, that's right. It was a stretch Hummer.
Yeah, we were at the pinnacle. We were at peak consumption in my early to mid 20s. Oh, it's so terrible. And anyway, like I remember going on the honeymoon, and my spouse and I, we both overpacked, but she overpacked significantly. She had the biggest suitcase. Someone got us these suitcases for
your wedding.
Yeah, as wedding gifts, and it's like this collection of suitcases from extra large to small, basically.
They like nest, like Russian nesting dolls. Yeah,
they were, but they were more terrifying because you could fill them with stuff.
Right.
And so the largest one she had, and of course, if you have the largest one, you feel compelled to fill it with everything, right? And so she just crammed it full of stuff. And I had the next, so she had the extra large, I had the large, I filled mine up with stuff as well. And then she had the medium, which she tried to use as a carry-on, but they wouldn't let her because it was too big. And then I had the small, which I used as a carry-on, in addition to like bringing a laptop bag with me. This is a 1-week honeymoon in Mexico. And for some reason I have like a suit with me, and I have like all of these extra, I had like 4 pairs of swimming trunks because of course I'm going to need a different pair every day.
Right.
And
what if the first 3 pair get dirty? You need a 4th.
Yeah, polo shirts and khakis, and what am I doing? But I didn't even think of what am I doing. It's like, well, I've got the space, I have to fill. I feel compelled to fill it. So we get to the airport. So we're flying out of Cincinnati. So we drove down to Cincinnati, which is the Cincinnati airport's actually in Kentucky, and she puts her bag up on the scale, and it's 70 pounds. And they're like, ma'am, we can't take this much stuff. And so they put my bag up there, and it's 40 pounds. Well, the limit at the time was 50 pounds. And so we had to remove 10 pounds from her bag and put it in my bag. God. We had to remove 10 pounds from her other bag and put it on her carry-on bag, which then she had to check. And so we had... I mean, I'm doing the math real quick in my head. Damn near 200 pounds worth of stuff with it. 150 pounds worth of stuff. We had another human with us, basically. And I can tell you that, like, most of that stuff just got in the way, which was, like, the perfect metaphor was, like, I didn't end up using much of the stuff. And some of the stuff I used just out of obligation. Well, I brought 4 pairs of swimming trunks. I might as well just alternate through them. And now it's like, now I'll bring 1 pair of workout / swimming trunks, and they serve multiple functions. And so I think when we think about our access to stuff, we're okay with having an empty room. Like, you're complete without filling it. It's totally fine. And in fact, it's really freeing. Mm-hmm. I remember when we did the packing party for Ryan, when he like first embraced minimalism, packed up all his stuff as if he were moving, and you went over to his condo, that big condo he was talking about, and it sounded different because you remove the superfluous sort of things that dampen the sound, and all of a sudden you have this like echo, but it was like a pleasant echo. It was like the echo you get from going to a cathedral or something, where all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is calming. I've noticed that. I've been doing this video series on YouTube this month, this past month, with answering a video every day. It's called Living Room Conversations, and basically I just turn on my phone camera and answer 1 question a day in my living room. And there's someone always comments like, there seems to be an echo in there. I'm like, no shit, I don't own anything.
Right.
Like, we own exactly what we need, and then also what adds value to our lives, but then we don't have the superfluous stuff. And hopefully there'll be a service soon where if I do need something, then I can bring it into my home.
Yeah, I was thinking about this morning before the podcast, how like when I was in the corporate world, I would buy stuff to fill the space because I had the space. Mm-hmm. But every time I bought something, it was like this affirmation of like, yeah, man, you're making it. You're living the American dream. You're able to do what you want. And yeah, before I knew it, I had a condo full of a bunch of stuff. But man, when I finally removed it, it felt so good. Like being in, and that's for me. Some people they like being around clutter, and that's fine. But for me, like having an empty room, some art on the wall, bookshelf, a couch, like that's like, I'm thinking about my living room right now. I mean, it's pretty empty, but it is so much better. Like I don't look at, my art and think, man, I wish I had 10 more paintings, or I wish I had 2 more couches, or yeah. I think that for someone who for someone who thinks that sounds crazy, like try it out. Meaning, like have your own little packing party, maybe in your living room. Like think of the room that you are in the most, and just pack up as whatever you can, and see what it's like to have an empty room. I'm not like a huge believer in feng shui or anything. Like I really don't know anything about feng shui, but like after that packing party, I started to get it. I started to understand like, oh, okay, yeah, like when I'm sitting here on my laptop answering emails from work, like not having a big screen TV in front of me to distract me, it really helps me to stay more focused. It helps me feel better.
Yeah. I was teaching a writing class this weekend, and one of the things I was talking about was the conversation I had with Donald Ray Pollock. He's a novelist from Chillicothe, Ohio, and I said, well, how do you, like, because he started writing when he was 55 years old. He had this really inspirational story. Like, how do you, like, stay focused? And he's like, just sit in the chair. Like, those 4 words totally changed my life with respect to writing, because what he was really saying, it was a metaphor for, like, remove the distractions. No Wi-Fi. Don't have your phone with you. There's no TV or radio on.
Yeah.
It's removing the superfluous, and then you can bring those things back in when you truly need them, as opposed to having the distractions turned on as if it's a fireplace going all the time. It's just the glowing screens all around us, and I get it. It's really intriguing. You know, I've got a 5-year-old daughter, and she loves watching Peppa Pig, and what's the new one she watches? Pocoyo is the new
kids.
I guess
Kids special, the new kids craze.
Yeah, it's on YouTube, and she just loves watching it. But so I and the sad thing is, like, you know, my frontal cortex is fully developed, and I still get trapped by the glowing screen.
Totally.
And so
it's been amazing. We just had a 6-month-old son, and how quickly they develop that reflex to see a screen and like get turned to it
towards it. Wow.
Is incredible.
And the weird thing is, like, you can, like, if you were to walk them past a house where a sprinkler is just going crazy, they may not think a whole lot of it. But if they see that same sprinkler on a television, it's like, like there's something about the glowing screen that just, it gets them fully enamored into this other world.
Dude,
right?
Glowing screens, they're pretty addictive, man.
They are indeed. They are.
I was thinking about, I was just in Missoula, and we got some friends. Each of them have a 2-year-old, and watching them use a cell phone, and like how they can hardly talk, but they can use a cell phone pretty easily. It's I don't know, something crazy.
Did you hear about the experiment where they dropped off? This was, I believe, in Ethiopia. They dropped off tablets in the village in Ethiopia without any instructions whatsoever, and you know, most of the village was illiterate, and especially little kids. They were not literate at all, and they had no instructions, no training, and they just dropped them off in the box. And within a week, when they came back, the kids they found a way to get online. Wow. And they were using the tablets and showing the younger kids, like the 7-year-olds are showing the 3-year-olds how to do it. And I heard about this on Seth Godin's podcast, Akimbo. And what I thought about there is, like, we feel compelled by these screens, and they can do really great things. So it's not black and white, it's not binary. We're all here because of the internet. You know, that it's been a great thing for us, but it can also be the greatest distraction I've ever experienced in my life. And the tug of war is trying to eliminate the distraction while using it for good.
I loved what Derek Sivers said when he chatted with you guys about, like, I think he said the greatest gift I can give my child is a long attention span.
Yeah.
And ever since I listened to that, I've just been thinking about that constantly, of just how much of like a superpower that's going to be for kids now, to, you know, if you can develop that 20 years from now, and everyone has short attention spans, that's going to feel like a superpower for them.
Yeah. But
then B, everything is fighting against that culturally, like as you're raising a kid, and how do you start to consciously think about how to create that in them?
Yeah, and I think, what he does is so admirable, like, where they'll just go and spend an entire day at a park, and it's testing the limits of his own attention span as well. But I think what happens when you remove the distractions, you're able to do that. And I've gotten considerably better, especially with Ella. And just because for me, I'm just like, all right, we've gone to the beach, we've seen the sunset, let's go.
Right.
Like, next thing. And that was programmed into me probably as a child, but mainly in the corporate world as well. Like, just get the next thing done, go task. All right, sunset is done. Get in the car, buckle up. All right, we're driving to dinner. The next thing, and then
Google Maps it, get the ETA.
Yeah, and you have like all of the next things, whereas Derek has removed the to-dos, so to speak, and instead he sort of has a to-be list, which is just the present moment, and that's it.
Yeah.
And man, I really admire that. And while I don't hope to be perfect, I hope to get closer to that each time that I spend time with Ella. And I still catch myself if I pull out my phone or whatever, and then I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Cal Newport, I don't know if you're familiar with his work. He did an event with Ryan. I was supposed to be there, but I was deathly ill. And one of the things that he wrote recently was about the need for being a digital grown-up. And the thing that he talked about, this is so good. In fact, let me see if I can, it might still be on my Instapaper here. I'll pull it up real quick. But basically what he's talking about is, well, here, it's right here. Digital wellness for grown-ups. We'll put a link to this in the show notes as well. Earlier this week, the Washington Post published an article on the digital wellness movement, which attempts to use technology to help cure some of the issues caused by technology. By the way, that seems a bit quixotic to me. Like, if we're just using technology to it's like using I don't know. It's like getting a paper cut and then taping that piece of paper onto you to heal the cut in a way.
Yeah.
This movement, for example, is responsible for an app that, quote, plants a tree each time you put down your phone, and then shows the tree withering and dying when you pick the phone back up. It also produced a popular plugin that displays each time you go online the number of days left in your expected lifetime. Even Apple is getting involved in digital wellness. Their new suite of, quote, well-being features in iOS includes a wake-up screen that helps you, quote, gently ease into your day when you pick up your phone in the morning, and an improved Siri that makes suggestions about optimal notification settings. Here's the optimal notification settings. Turn them off.
Yeah.
That's optimal. I recognize that digital tools have a useful role to play in productivity. I've long advised, for example, that people use internet blocking software like Freedom to help jumpstart deep work training. So Cal Newport's book is Deep Work. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well, because it's well worth reading. But something about this growing digital wellness movement makes me uneasy. And I think I've finally put my finger on the source of my concern. It's infantilizing. This is so true. I'm a grown man. If I'm checking my phone every 5 minutes or playing video games instead of paying attention to my kids, I don't need an animation of a dying tree to nudge me toward better habits. I need someone I respect to knock the stupid thing out of my hand and say, "Get your act together." My sense is that more and more people in our current culture of digital excess are hungry for this type of strong challenge. They don't want to depend on Apple to tweak their OS to be slightly less intrusive, or need to download an app that provides a fun reminder about disconnecting. They want instead to be so wrapped up in doing things that are hard and important and meaningful that they forget where they left their phone in the first place. There's something about these new technologies and the screen zombie lifestyle that surrounds them that feels fundamentally childish. This is making people uneasy. That's because they're ready to grow up. And I think that, man, the times where I'm not even tempted by pacification or distraction are those times of deep work where I'm doing something that is deeply satisfying. Writing for me is one of those things. Or for podcasting, we're having these conversations. I don't feel like, damn, I need to check my email right now.
Yeah.
I wonder if I got any text messages.
Let's stop and check the news. Maybe something happened.
right. What is Trump tweeting about today?
Yeah.
It's like, okay. I mean, the times that I feel compelled to do that is the times where I feel compelled to, I want to take the path of least resistance, the go with the flow, the easy route. I had my doctors on the podcast last week, and one of the things I was talking to them about, and this was fascinating. Like, I felt like the optimal time for my health in my life, or at least what I thought when I felt really good, was age 31. And then right around 34, 35, I started having a ton of health problems. I've worked really hard the last 2 years to fix them, and with their help, they've helped me out immensely. But I said one thing that I still don't feel as sharp as I did when I was at age 31. Like, I'm much closer. I got to a point 2 years ago when I had such bad brain fog, I thought I was dying. I had a bunch of issues. I had C. diff, which kills like 14,000 people a year. And so I had the set of problems, and I had bad brain fog, and I've recovered significantly from that, but I still don't feel as sharp as I did when I was 31. But then I also listen to more podcasts than I've ever listened to. And I'm thinking, like, oh, wait a minute, like, that's just another pacifier for me. Like, and so this past week I went and deleted like 90% of the podcasts I listened to. I kept the ones that are like truly essential for me, the ones that I get immense value from. But I've spent the last week listening to very few podcasts, and instead listening to music, or just not bringing my phone with me at all when I go out for a walk, and using that time to think. And I have felt a sense of just a little bit more clarity, like incremental. 3% more, 5% more. But imagine if that compounds over the course of a year or something.
I think it'll be interesting to see how podcasts impact time spent reading.
Yeah.
Because it's a similar sort of neurological response of like, I'm getting this information is valuable. But I do think I love podcasts, but I do think there's like a ton of value psychologically. There's a lot of research to show this, that like reading is important.
Podcasting or listening is fundamentally passive, where reading is
passive
active.
Versus active. Yeah. And it'll be interesting, if I could read Cal Newport's book, or if I could go listen to 2 podcasts with Cal Newport in 10 years, what's going to be sort of the path of least resistance. And I think it'll be interesting to see, if reading on a subject becomes this like very intentional act, because just passively listening to something while you're doing work and catching the tidbits is so much easier. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's this weird sort of payoff between going wide and going deep too. I mean, Ryan and I, we've published 3 books together, and the best we can hope for is like 250,000 copies out there in the world, right? Which is phenomenal. And but if 250,000 people don't listen to this episode, I would be devastated.
Right.
So it's this weird thing where all of a sudden, like, you have this broader base of people, but I think the secret then with the book, it can't be fluff.
Exactly.
It has to go deep. It has to be meaningful. And I'm really encouraged by the new ways that we publish things now, we as a society, because it used to be a book had to be 250 pages, right? Because that way the publisher could justify charging $40 for this hard copy, and now it doesn't have to be that way. If I look at a Dennis Johnson book or a Seth Godin book, these are books that are 120 pages sometimes, because it's whatever is necessary, and they cut the excess stuff out of it, right? And I think we can do that now, and I think the same is true with any other work that we do. It's much more about going deep. It's the reason Ryan and I can say this proudly, we've never had anything that has gone viral, in the sense that I mean, there are a bunch of things I can think of that have gone viral, that quite often virality is like a car crash, though. Like, people will all turn their head and look, but they're not going to stick around, right? When people find out about the podcast, they tend to stick around, or our website, or the documentary will lead them to other work, and then they can go deeper if they want. But if we ever had something that just truly went viral and hundreds of millions of views somewhere, that wouldn't mean anything if people didn't stick around. And they didn't
retention rate's very low.
Yeah. And also the attention rate is pretty low too, right? Like, you get this burst of attention. There's a study I saw recently. The average American attention span now is 8 to 59 seconds.
Oh, wow.
And so giving your kid the long attention span just means greater than a minute, I guess, at this point.
Wow. Well, we got to be careful, man, because on every single screen that we own, the screens that we see, whether it's a billboard or a digital billboard, whatever, that when we're driving down the road, we're in a society where everyone is trying, they're vying for our attention.
Yes.
Like, they're going out of their way to distract us, to implant a thought in our head that's going to make us want to buy what they're distracting us with.
Yes.
And I think, to Cal Newport's point, like, to be an adult when it comes to this digital age that we live in, we have to be very deliberate with all the screens that we have in our homes. And I think especially with kids, it's such a easy thing to give a kid to kind of babysit them for a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with TV. There's nothing wrong with a laptop or an iPad or whatever it may be. The problem is when we are allowing those advertisements, those corporations, to distract us, to implant these really kind of needless needs.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason that the rate of depression in Amish society is nearly non-existent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and part of it has to do with the lack of distractions and the amount of deep work that is involved in everyday life there, and true focus and attention. But it also has to do with setting up a structure that is inherently meaningful. And I think about that now. You don't have to be Amish to set up those structures, but it becomes more difficult, as you say, when you have these constant temptations in our everyday lives.
Yeah, and a lot of them, it's our own doing.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it is us. Yes, that looks nice and shiny, and we want to get that, but not realizing like the attention that it's going to take away from us.